Coming up tonight on KPBS Evening Edition, 650,000 San Diegans don't have health insurance. Will they be forced to buy it?
U.S. Supreme Court is hearing the case this week. We'll tell you what's at stake.
And the community mourns the brutal murder of an Iraqi woman in El Cajon.
Was the killing motivated by hate? KPBS Evening Edition starts now.
Hello, thanks for joining us. I'm Joanne Ferrian.
And I'm Dwayne Brown. An environmental group says Southern California Edison failed to tell regulators about equipment changes at the San Onofre nuclear plant in San Diego's North County. KPBS reporter Amitha Sharma has been following this story and joins us from the news center. So, Amitha, who commissioned the study and what did it find?
Arnie Gunderson, who is chief engineer of the energy consulting firm Fairwinds Associates, did the study for the group Friends of the Earth. He says Edison did not tell the Nuclear Regulatory Commission it had made design changes inside new steam generators it installed 1 year ago at San Onofre. Gunderson reviewed those design changes and believes they are responsible for increasing the wear rate up to 20 times the normal rate on tubes carrying radioactive water. San Onofre has been offline after a tiny radiation leak was discovered in a worn tube in January. Gunderson says if the design changes are not addressed, a tube could actually fail. It could break, and there could be a bigger radiation leak that could heighten the exposure of people living in surrounding communities, and that could increase their chances of developing cancer.
And what was SoCal Edison's reaction to this report, Anita?
Edison says it's the top priority of the company to make sure that the public and its workers are safe. It also says it has been transparent about its steam generator replacement process to the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, and it says it will not reopen the nuclear plant until it is safe for everyone.
And I'm sure you'll keep us on top of this story. KPBS reporter Amitha Sharma.
A memorial is underway tonight for an Iraqi woman who was beaten to death in her home in El Cajon, and a representative of the Iraqi government is attending. Shaima Alawadi was attacked last Wednesday and taken off life support on Saturday. Police haven't released many details, but her daughter says there was a note saying, "Go back to your country, you terrorist." El Cajon police say they're not ruling out the possibility of a hate crime, and a deputy district attorney with the hate crimes unit is talking with investigators. We will have more on that a little later on Evening Edition. A Camp Pendleton Marine says he will get a dismissal hearing on Saturday morning. That's according to his own Facebook page. Sergeant Gary Stein was relieved of duty last week as officials looked into his anti-Obama posts on Facebook. Defense Department rules say service members can express personal views about politics, but not as representatives of the armed forces. Saturday's hearing will determine whether Stein can remain in the Corps.
Synthetic drugs like spice and bath salts are being declared a public nuisance in San Diego County. Today, the Board of Supervisors approved an ordinance to take action against stores that sell the drugs. Spice and bath salts mimic the effects of marijuana and cocaine. It's already against state law to sell or possess the drugs. County supervisors say the law would close loopholes in the state ordinance.
Well, this sounds like a crime worthy of the Grinch. Someone stole a bronze statue of the Lorax from Dr. Seuss's widow. The Grinch and the Lorax are both Seuss characters. The statue was a twin to this one at the Dr. Seuss National Memorial. It stood in Audra Geisel's backyard in La Jolla, and it was created by her daughter. Someone took it over the weekend. The Geisel family says they just want it back, and they hope it wasn't stolen for scrap metal.
It may be a sign of the times or an indication adding a little more fun to a theme park can actually pay off. SeaWorld San Diego saw its attendance go up significantly last year after adding a new attraction. Spring break often means larger crowds at SeaWorld San Diego, but attendance in the past few years was on the decline until the park added the Turtle Reef exhibit last year. SeaWorld's president, John Riley, says 3 out of 4 visitors went through the attraction.
We saw almost 2,000 guests an hour go through this exhibit through the summer last year.
Riley says it ranks only second to the Shamu show in terms of interest at the park, but
The biggest draw may be the Riptide Rescue Ride for kids 6 to 12 years old.
We're always very deliberate about developing the rides so that they tell the story of an animal and they present a world-class animal exhibit at the same time.
Carlsbad resident John Decker and his family have been coming to SeaWorld for years to enjoy the exhibits and marine life. He was a little surprised about the popularity of the rides.
You know, maybe the rides because it gives the kids a little bit more to do, and I know my kids enjoy the rides, so that could have something to do with it.
Attendance was up 14% last year at SeaWorld after the debut of Turtle Reef. Riley hopes the park's newest ride under construction called Manta increases attendance even more this year.
It's a mega attraction. It's going to combine a roller coaster with a world-class animal exhibit in a way that only SeaWorld could do it.
Now, a single-day pass to SeaWorld is $73 for adults, $65 for children. The roller coaster and Manta exhibit is scheduled to open on May 26th. Nearly 1 out of 4 San Diegans had no health care insurance in 2010. The number comes from researchers at UCLA. The federal health care law specifically targets the uninsured, and it was the main legal issue before the Supreme Court today. Joanne is looking into the story with her guest at the Evening Edition Roundtable.
All eyes are on the U.S. Supreme Court as they continue to hear arguments in the landmark hearing on the Affordable Health Care Act. At issue, can the federal government require all people to have health insurance? Glenn Smith is a constitutional law professor at the California Western School of Law. He joins me in studio. Thank you, Glenn Smith, for being here.
You're welcome.
Now, maybe I oversimplified things just a little, but is that really what's being challenged right now?
That's the essence of it. I mean, there are all kinds of case precedents and individual sub-arguments, but that's really the crux of today's issue.
So the people who oppose this law, why do they say the government can't do this? And in terms of the government, why do they say they can do this?
They say that even an expanding federal power to regulate commerce has always been a power to regulate the commerce of people who are already in a market. They're already buying something or they're participating in a market, and that this is a radical and unprecedented requirement that people enter a market, and that's inconsistent with a capitalistic, individualistic system like ours.
So forcing people to buy something that they may not want, really. I want to play a clip from today's hearing because it really speaks to this. This is from Justice Anthony Kennedy, and again, it's from today's hearing. Let's have a listen.
But the reason this is concerning is because it requires the individual to do an affirmative act. In the law of torts, our tradition, our law has been that you don't have the duty to rescue someone if that person's in danger. The blind man's walking in front of a car and you do not have a duty to stop him, absent some relation between you. And there's some severe moral criticisms of that rule, but that's generally the rule. And here the government is saying that the federal government has a duty to tell the individual citizen that it must act, and that is different from what we have in previous cases. Well, that changes the relationship of the federal government to the individual in a very fundamental way.
So is it as clear as that, the law?
Well, that's the issue, but there's certainly another side to it. But I think that if I'm the government, I'm listening to that question excruciatingly interested in whether Justice Kennedy is posing the argument, or is he endorsing that argument and believing that it does create a fundamental change in the federal government's relations to citizens? Because if he's already thinking that, the potential swing voter, may well be along the way toward voting against the government.
So if you're the government defending this law, what do you say? What do you say back?
Well, you say what the Solicitor General continued to say today, which is that people are already in the health care market. Their health care is something that people cannot opt out of. They can't know whether they're going to be involved in it. So they're already in the market. This just regulates how they participate and when, and makes sure that they can't impose the cost of their failure to provide health care for themselves on other people. So it's a question of, are you in the market now already, in which case it is a more typical regulation of people in the market, or is this some radical new requirement to enter it? And most of the 2 hours of argument were really devoted to various aspects of that question.
Doesn't the government already tell us what we have to buy? Car insurance is just, maybe that's just a simple person's, viewpoint of the law.
No, it was brought up in the argument today. The answer from the opponents is, you only have to buy car insurance if you already own a car and have decided to join the car owning market. So they say this would be like requiring, the analogy they say with cars, it would be like requiring people to buy a car who don't want to buy one in order to help Detroit. But again, the government says, yes, but you don't have to buy a car. But let's face it, people are going to end up needing health care sometime in their life, or at least that's highly predictable.
If the court upholds this law, does it, in fact, as Justice Kennedy says, fundamentally change the relationship between the federal government and people? Could it go on to affect future law?
It doesn't have to. The court could write a fairly narrow opinion that emphasized that health care is a unique market. In fact, if this is upheld, it's only going to be because Justice Kennedy and perhaps Chief Justice Roberts felt that there was enough of a limiting principle that it wouldn't create that danger. If the court thinks accepting the individual mandate is going to inevitably create a danger of open-ended government requirements and interference in an unprecedented way, then you're going to have a majority against it.
They are the swing votes. You mentioned those two justices.
I think so. That seems to be the consensus in the law professor community anyway.
And there's also talk that can you separate one part of this act from another? If they say strike this down, does that mean you can still uphold the law?
Exactly, and that's the issue they'll deal with tomorrow. Assuming that they're going to decide that the individual mandate is unconstitutional, how much of the rest of the law can stand and be left behind? Or is it an integrated whole that must stand or fall together? And they have a choice, everything from the mandate falls, everything else in the 1,000-plus page bill stays, or the whole bill falls, or in between the government's arguing that the mandate falls, but so also do the important pre-existing condition provisions.
Exactly. So one of the reasons, or the main reason we have this clause, right, everybody has to buy in, is so that
pay for that.
Exactly. Everybody, even with pre-existing conditions. So could you come out of this where this is unconstitutional, this part of the law, but insurers still have to provide health insurance to everyone?
You could, and suddenly insurers would become a strong political force for something to substitute for the individual mandate to make sure that the coverage was affordable. So the politics, whichever way they decide this case, the politics that flow out of it are going to be very interesting, and to some people, and to the losers, very agonizing.
And finally, Glenn Smith, do we know when we're going to hear an answer to all of this?
We don't know for sure. It's very likely to be at the very end of the Supreme Court term, which will be late June, early July.
Okay, we want to let people at home know that we do have a special on tonight on NPR at 7 p.m. That's it on KPBS Radio. Thank you so much, Glenn, for being here.
You're very welcome.
Thousands of high school athletes get injured every year, but most schools don't have anyone trained to deal with those injuries. Coming up, a program in San Diego teaching athletes to save athletes. This is KPBS Evening Edition.
Tonight on KPBS at 8, personal stories of tragedy and survival, and compelling eyewitness videos get you as close to being there as you can. Japan's killer quake on Nova. Then at 9 on American Experience, a deadly factory fire in New York and the outrage that follows leads to the creation of workplace safety laws. And at 10, the battle over the future of News Corp and Rupert Murdoch's reputation on Frontline. That's all tonight on KPBS.
Doc Martin is back.
My goodness.
It's a new season, and he's a new dad.
Look at that. Brand new little family. It's disgusting.
But he's leaving Port Wend, and they've already replaced him.
I'm Dr. Tibbs. The new doctor said I could have some for my ankles.
Well, she's wrong. Put it back.
Can Martin and Louisa make it work now that there's a baby?
Bit of a puzzler there then, eh, Doc?
The season premiere of Doc Martin.
Watch new episodes, part of a season premiere event, Thursday at 8 on KPBS. KPBS Evening Edition is made possible by Joan and Irwin Jacobs and by
Many people gathered today to remember an Iraqi woman beaten to death in her home in El Cajon last week. A memorial for Shaima Alawadi is wrapping up at the Islamic Center of Lakeside. Many are questioning the motive because of a note left at the scene. Alawadi's daughter says it called her mother a terrorist. Joanne takes a look at hate crimes in our community at the roundtable.
Joining me to look at the issue of hate in San Diego County are my guests, Oscar Garcia. He's a San Diego Hate Crimes Unit District Attorney, and Edgar Hopida with the Council on American Islamic Relations. Thank you, gentlemen, for being here.
Thank you for having us.
Now, Edgar, we have a large Muslim community in El Cajon. What's been the reaction to this death?
First is shock, but also they feel that maybe they're under siege because there's a possibility that it might be a hate crime. So that's the perception. Whether or not it is a hate crime or not, it's still to be decided. But they feel like that their community is under siege.
Before this happened, was there ever some talk or feeling that, in fact, there was this kind of prejudice or hate within the community?
Well, I mean, just generally, Muslims have been, since 9/11, the target of being maligned and looked at. So, but as far as it going all the way toward violence, that's something that we haven't really experienced as much in the county, thank God, as opposed to other areas of the United States.
Now, you're very careful to point out if this is a hate crime. We don't know whether it is. Now, I know, Oscar Garcia, you can't speak specifically about this case, but can you give us an idea of the frequency of hate crimes in San Diego County and the nature of those crimes?
Certainly. Well, over the last few years, we actually had a decrease statistically in hate crimes in San Diego County. Back in 2006, there was a spike of about 30% increase in hate crimes, and unfortunately in 2010, it spiked up again, about 30%. So we should always be vigilant in regards to these cases. We want the public to certainly contact the police immediately, even if it doesn't rise to the level of a hate crime, if it's what we refer to as a hate incident, name-calling, slurs being used towards people who are different than the attackers.
What are we talking about then for hate crime specifically?
In order to determine and file charges for a hate crime, we need to have significant evidence that the motivation for the crime was a bias, a prejudice towards the victim. So if someone is attacked with a weapon or there's vandalism, we have to show that additional element of the motivation of the perpetrator, that it was bias motivated.
And we know that there's been an increase. Do we know how often it happens, though, in the county?
I receive cases in which the perpetrators have been identified, so I can pretty much get the tip of the iceberg. There's a lot of other cases where, unfortunately, a lot of these cases go unsolved.
And are there
go ahead.
certain areas in the county where this happens more in other areas?
I think historically East County has gotten kind of a bad reputation, but I can honestly say over the last 5.5 years prosecuting, I have cases from throughout the county, from South Bay to North County to downtown.
Edgar, have you ever been a victim of prejudice or hate, or someone in your family?
My wife was a victim of an anti-Muslim hate incident at Horton Plaza Mall. A couple went up to her and said, she's Filipino, by the way, and she's from Canada. They said, why don't you go back to Iraq? And this was during the, the Iraq War. So very disturbing, coming from downtown San Diego.
And how do you, I mean, that was a name-calling incident. How do you kind of get over this? I mean, Oscar, this question goes to you as well. I mean, people who are victims from really a range of hate, how do you get over that incident and kind of try to recover from that?
Well, studies have demonstrated that victims of hate crimes take more than twice as long to recover emotionally, because it's such a personal thing about their skin color, their religion, and they feel that there's nothing they can do to make themselves less at risk to being attacked in the future. And when they share that story with their loved ones, their community, they may feel the same way. That's why these cases are very different, and that's why we have additional penalties for them.
Oscar, when you look at these cases that come to your desk, do you ever think, I can't believe this is still happening?
Absolutely. One of the early cases I had was out in East County, unfortunately in East County, where the victims tossed a Molotov cocktail into their residence, something you kind of think back in the South, back in Mississippi in the earlier part of our century, that these things were still happening.
Now, Edgar, what does a community do now to sort of move forward and to make sure there isn't some retaliation right now?
Well, what we're trying to do is first calm the waters, say that let the police do their job. Let's not call it a hate crime until it's determined that's a hate crime. And, I think we had positive, feedback from a lot of people, people from other faiths, other religions, saying, what can we do to support and help you guys? And that's why we're going to be holding something, later on, or in the evening with this memorial.
Okay. Edgar and Oscar, thank you both for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
About 7 million teenagers nationwide are involved in high school sports. Whether it's football, basketball, or cheerleading, injuries happen. But there are no requirements regarding medical personnel at games and practices. KPBS health reporter Kenny Goldberg tells us a new program in San Diego is trying to fill the gap.
In May 2009, 2 weeks before graduation, Tommy Mallon was playing in his final lacrosse game at Santa Fe Christian High School in Solana Beach. At one point, Mallon and an opposing player went for a ground ball. They smashed into each other, and Mallon went down. Luckily, the school had an athletic trainer on the sidelines. As she kneeled over him, Mallon told her he couldn't feel the back of his neck. She had someone call 911.
I had broken my neck in 3 places, so if I'd gotten up, I could have severed my spinal cord, and I could have, all my doctors either told me that I would have died or at least been a quadriplegic.
The National Athletic Trainers Association says every year, sports injuries put about 30,000 high school athletes in the hospital. Even so, only about 4 out of 10 high schools nationwide have access to an athletic trainer.
2 and 3, that's in love. 5, 6, 7, and 8.
That's the impetus for a new program called Athletes Saving Athletes. It aims to teach high school students who play sports some rudimentary skills that could help save a teammate's life. Tommy Mallon's mom, Beth, launched it through her foundation, Advocates for Injured Athletes. She started it after Tommy's injury. Mallon says there just aren't enough athletic trainers at local high schools.
We're not trying to train athletes to take the position of an athletic trainer, but what we're training them to do is what an emergency situation looks like and what you might be able to do as an athlete.
That includes teaching students how to perform CPR, how to recognize some of the signs of heat stroke, and the importance of not moving an athlete that may have suffered a back or spinal injury.
They learn plays, they're in AP courses, they're smart kids. They've just never been given this knowledge. They just assume that there's a supervising adult out there that's going to take care of them, and that's not always the case.
But why aren't there athletic trainers or medical personnel at each school sporting event? For answers, we turn to Jerry Schneep. He heads up the regional chapter of the California Interscholastic Federation, the group that oversees high school athletics.
There's not a standard for medical personnel throughout the state. And to be honest, I think the reason is that there are different levels of financial ability to pay for those kind of people in different school districts.
Schneep explains each school district sets its own policy. Schneep says ideally, all high schools should have an athletic trainer on staff. But given the financial challenges districts face, it's not practical.
And when you're having to make decisions of a trainer for a 1:30 practice or a full-time teacher to help students learn how to read, it's a tough call for our people who make those decisions.
Dr. Sean Evans sees a lot of high school sports injuries in his emergency room at Scripps Hospital in La Jolla. Dr. Evans says given schools' financial problems, it makes sense to train young athletes to be first responders.
You can get a group of 5-year-olds, kindergartners, to understand the use of an AED and save someone's life in 10 to 15 minutes of training. We can certainly do it with high school seniors. And ultimately around concussion awareness, that's a fundamental skill I'd love for everybody in the public to have. And sadly enough, when most people get that knowledge is after they've had the concussion. So why not before?
That's the philosophy behind the Athletes Saving Athletes program. Britton Sutphin is alive today because a high school teammate pulled her out of the water when she passed out during a swim practice. Sutphin's heart had stopped. It was only because the community pool had an AED that lifeguards were able to revive her. She has a quick response to those who say schools have bigger priorities than sports safety.
It's your kid's life that's at stake, and I think every parent wants to know that their athlete is competing in a safe environment where action can be taken if needed, and I think that's more important than some of those other things.
KPBS health reporter Kenny Goldberg. Kenny tells us the Athletes Saving Athletes program has been in 4 San Diego high schools so far this year. This is KPBS Evening Edition.
I'm
I'm Judy Woodruff on the next News Hour. Day 2 of arguments over the health care reform law at the Supreme Court, plus Pope Benedict's trip to Cuba. That's Tuesday on the PBS News Hour.
Coming up on Finding Your Roots, educator Jeffrey Canada and journalist Barbara Walters discover while names may change, family roots do not.
So they make it from Warm Water to Walters.
You just discovered your family's original name.
And it was Canada. This is just amazing. So I'm Barbara Warmwater. I like Barbara Warmwater.
Finding Your Roots.
Sunday at 8 on KPBS.
The American people have named PBS
the most trusted source of news and public affairs for the 8th year in a row. Trust. The American people have spoken.
Thank you.
Welcome back to the Public Square on KPBS Evening Edition. As we told you earlier, the U.S. Supreme Court is hearing arguments into the constitutionality of the Affordable Health Care Act. At the center of the debate, can the federal government force you to buy health insurance? Many of you have already weighed in on KPBS.org, and let's begin with California Defender, who says if we permit the U.S. government to mandate the purchase of health insurance, a commercial service, there is no limit to what they can mandate in the future. Washington will legally be able to mandate what foods we must eat, what clothes we must wear, what cars we must drive, what houses we must live in. And the next one is from Norman B.R., and he says, what is the difference between the states requiring individuals to purchase car insurance and the federal government requiring individuals to purchase health insurance? And finally, from Ben72, he says, not everyone is required to purchase car insurance. Specifically, those who choose not to drive a car are free not to pay for that unwanted insurance. It is like helmet laws or smoking. Everybody knows the risks, but as adults, we should be free to take responsibility for our own decisions. What do you think? Now, there are several ways to tell us. You can follow us on Twitter or on Facebook, or send me an email directly, jferrian@kpbs.org. Or if you want to add already to that stream of conversation, go to kpbs.org. And now let's go back to the news desk where Dwayne has a recap of tonight's top stories.
A memorial service was held this evening for an Iraqi immigrant found beaten to death in her home in El Cajon. A representative of the Iraqi government was there. Lawmakers in Iraq are demanding a full investigation of the killing. The San Onofre nuclear plant will stay shut down until investigators figure out why tubes in the reactors are failing. The announcement came after an environmental group released a report saying Southern California Edison misled federal regulators about design changes in the plant's steam generators. The report says the changes are the likely reason for the problem. You can watch and comment on any of the stories you saw tonight on our website, kpbs.org/evening edition. Thank you for joining us. You have a great night. We leave you with a look at the forecast.